What would you say is the biggest lie that people believe about their own mental fortitude?
You believe that what you see is real. It's provably not. Your body is pre-processing reality for about a third of a second before your brain even gets a signal of what's happening. So when I clap my hands, you're listening and you say, well, it took some time for the signal to get through the internet. It got to me, and then it took some time to get to my ears, and then I heard it. It's just not true. After it gets to your body, a third of a second later, you heard it, and your body edits out that third of a second. And that's where so much of the chaos that we live in happens. And that's why meditation or things that work faster than meditation are so important.
You've been a loud advocate for meditation for pretty much as long as I've known you. How has it changed your life and made you a more resilient person?
Well, I learned in my early 30s that hundreds of times a day that my body was flipping into an autonomic nervous response, like fight or flight. It was doing this without my knowledge or permission. And I didn't really even know what it felt like. And when I started meditating, and more importantly, started meditating with feedback, with technology showing me what's going on in there, I'm like, oh my God, that's what it feels like when I'm in that state versus that state. And once I learned the feeling, it's like having a new gauge or a new display. It's something that maybe tells you your battery percentage on your phone or something. Oh, look, I didn't know that before. And then I realized, well, every day it's going in and out. So then I started playing whack-a-mole with it. So I'm sitting in a meeting, and for no reason I can discern, my body just does that. And I'm like, and you play whack-a-mole, and you put yourself back in a rested repair state, and a parasympathetic state, you could call that. And it turns out it's within your control, and meditation brings you awareness. And meditation is about becoming more conscious. Problem is, I don't know about you, but most people don't have the time or desire to spend 3 months in Nepal and Tibet like I did, or fast in a cave for a while, or study with gurus from different lineages. I just did it, well, because my brain was so trashed. And maybe because after a while I realized, now that I fixed my biology, I spent $2.5 million reversing my age and recovering from chronic fatigue and arthritis and weighing 300 pounds and all this stuff. I just realized, look, I know how to live to at least 180. I think it's very possible. If you're not going to be happy and peaceful and live that long, and very, very powerful at the same time, you don't want to live that long. So control of your emotional state is important if you want to live a long time. It's important if you want to be successful. It's important if you want to be in a good relationship. And even if you just like being by yourself, it's important that you like being by yourself. So talking about longevity without consciousness, there's a word for that. It's called hell. Literally in traditional Buddhist teachings, living forever without having control of your state is not the kind of life that anybody wants.
Do you really think that it's going to be possible within our lifetimes to live to 180?
Unquestionably. In fact, when people think it's not possible, I'm like, are you not paying attention? Here's the deal. Our current best is 120 years old. That person was born in 1905. We didn't have cars. We fought World War II largely with horseback. We hadn't flown an airplane yet. We couldn't spell DNA. It's only 3 letters. We just didn't know what they were. We didn't have antibiotics. We didn't have the internet sharing PubMed. And we didn't have AI. The breakthroughs that are happening in longevity right now are so profound. And Max, I've been working in longevity for 25 years. In my late 20s, I was so fat and so sick that I started hanging out with my elders, a group of people, mostly in their 70s and 80s in Palo Alto, who were actively working on extending human life back when everyone who did that was totally crazy. But the stuff they knew, it taught me how to get my life back. And it turns out the things that make old people young make young people powerful. So what that means is you can control your state. And what I've learned over the years of creating the biohacking movement, it's that you have some amount of energy that your body allocates before you can think. And we can talk about the algorithm, like where the body puts energy. And that's one of the two big things in heavily meditated. But if you just had a lot more energy, that would be pretty amazing. So if you want to live a long time, or you want to be really happy, or you just want to show up for the things that are important for you in the world, you must manage your hardware. That means add more energy, be better at turning 30 pounds of air and some food into electricity and heat and hormones and all that. And then you have to be a badass at allocating the energy where you want it to go and not wasting it. And if you do that, your chances of living to at least 180 are much better. And my bet is I want to do 50% better than our current best. I have 100 years to do it, and I have all of the power of technology. I've had gene therapy already that makes you on average 9 years younger in biological tests. So I opened up the Biohacking conference. It's now in its 13th year in Austin. I opened it up with a video. I'm like, we've already added 6.5 years to our expected life. And I have a video of Einstein saying, there is no chance we will ever harness the power of the atom for electricity. And the head of the FCC saying, there is no chance we will ever use satellites to carry phone calls or useful transmissions. And even old school guys like Peter Attia saying, there is no way we can extend human life. And I'm like, what planet are you from? Because I have interviewed hundreds of people, and there are tens of thousands of doctors with PhDs actively reversing the age of cells and unpacking the very language of biology. And if you're going to sit here and go, well, you know, when I look back in the 70s, those guys didn't live very long. You're like, what are you smoking? You're smoking the past, and the future is not exponential the way it used to be. Moore's law is you square things, so it's exponential. We are now cubing things thanks to the kind of innovation from AI. It now takes me 10 minutes if I'm helping out a friend with a really complex illness. And it used to take me 3 days of synthesizing the data myself off of PubMed. And just because I know how to write the right questions, because I'm a biohacker, well, it's profoundly easy. A dear friend who's speaking at the conference had cyclic vomiting for 20 years. Every 6 weeks for several days, throwing up every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day. Brutal condition. It was 10 minutes. And I said, look, I'm going to help you. But before I would have had to go and I would have had to unpack all the pathways, figure out where the deficiencies were, how to address them. And within 1 day of doing the thing that we'll say I did it, but I did it with the help of AI, which is like, it stopped. Right? So, Max, I don't know anyone watching can say, I'm not going to live longer, unless it could be that a comet hits the planet. And I've actually met the guy in charge of planetary asteroid defense at JPL. Very cool guy. We probably should have a few more of those because if you have a long time to live, okay. The other thing that might be a problem would be microplastics. And this is also a solvable problem, but we should get on that now before we get even more of them out there.
Absolutely.
And then the other one could be like Fauci making more viruses. That would be a problem too.
That would be a problem.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the intersection of biology and AI. I mean, I feel like it's already happening. My science literacy and my health has improved dramatically since the availability of, just ChatGPT alone.
Oh yeah. And it's not even probably the best right now. If you go to Grok, it has a setting that says not a doctor. And go in there and ask it some questions, upload your lab tests and ask it really hard questions. It is better than all but the very top tier of functional and longevity doctors already. And we still need our doctors because healers are not algorithms. And the big pharma industry and the insurance industry has tried to force doctors to become little robotic algorithm dispensing machines, which is bad for doctors and it's really bad for patients. So we're seeing doctors return to being healers. And that's such a relief for doctors. And when you're working with a truly caring doctor in longevity or in functional medicine, or maybe in a certain specialty, if AI gives them time to sit down and work with you, and we remove the evils of insurance control or big pharma from, or just the influences. They're not all evil. Sometimes pharma's great, not the industry, but what they make. Well, then we create a whole different type of healing and longevity. I'll just say, if there's something wrong with you today and you're listening to this, like something wrong with your body, it's probably fixable. And you're probably going to learn how to do it from AI first already and give it another year. And it's just crazy. And then, now it comes down to, can we make the molecules that activate the pathways we just discovered thanks to AI? Oh, wait, we now can fold any protein we want. In fact, at a conference in Lake Nona last week in Florida, we're opening an Upgrade Labs there. This is where Deepak Chopra has his big center. It's like the future city of the world kind of place. I sat next to a guy who was in charge of fully simulating a human cell from the DNA on up inside a computer, so that then you can actually make a new molecule using AI and then run it in a perfectly accurate simulation of a cell. And with all of that, it's like, oh, we're not going to be able to live longer. So let's put on your, I'm going to live a very long time. Maybe you're only going to make it to 120. The first thing you should do is, anytime someone says the best you can do is extend your health span, you should look at them in the eye and you should say, coward. Because that is not enough. It used to be, go back 100 years, if you made it past your middle ages, you'd probably be healthy until you dropped at the end of time. People didn't have that long, slow decline with diapers and wheelchairs and all the horrors of modern medicine. So maybe you should just set your goal a little bit higher. And if you do that and you work with a goal that says, I don't want to just be healthy till I'm 87. If I was in Japan, I'd live another 8 years anyway. So 87 is not even a hard limit. How about I make myself so crazy abundantly healthy that I'm going to live way longer than I'm supposed to? What that means, you can't put plastic in the ocean because you know you're going to eat it if you're around for 100 plus years.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. So you start taking care of the world around you, and you start paying attention to your society, and you start thinking in 20 and 30 year cycles instead of 4 year cycles, and it changes things. But if the entire time you are easily programmable, what's the point? That's why I wrote Heavily Meditated. It's because that system in your body that pre-processes reality, that is hyper-focused on the wrong things unless you train it, it will prevent you from seeing reality. It'll prevent you from being in charge of yourself. And what that means is, if I can trigger you, even by talking about kale, then
I knew it was gonna that this was gonna come up, because of course the perennial battle between you and me and our love/disdain for kale. It's a tale almost as old as time at this point.
You know, the fact that you're one of the leaders of the Kale Liberation Front.
The Kale Liberation Front.
It's been exposed, Max.
You know, you'll be pleased to know I actually haven't eaten that much kale of late.
If you dearly love kale and you eat it occasionally, there's actually a reason you might be into that. And it's also in Heavily Meditated.
Is it? I can't wait to find out.
I guess I got distracted on my last point, but I think we should talk about that.
Yeah.
This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. Well, I mean, the book Heavily Meditated, I mean, you talk about a lot of these technologies that can help to bolster, mental fortitude, to help, readers reach their cognitive potential.
It's more like peaceful potential and your heart-centered potential, and to just be yourself no matter what happens in the world around you. And like one of the techniques, and there's a bunch of things in there that are not meditation. It's actually not a meditation book. It's here's all the things that work faster than just meditating. And I've done, every morning I'd wake up early and chant for more than a year. And I did Art of Living breathwork every morning for 5 years. And I've studied with a lot of gurus and done shamanic training. And I don't talk about that as much until recently, just because otherwise people think biohackers were truly crazy, and we're not crazy. In fact, biohacking is consistently using data to prove that ancient practices work, which is kind of cool. Like now you can't say only idiots do that. I'm like, well, only idiots who like results do that. And like, then it becomes a very different conversation.
Well, meditation used to be considered woo-woo or something that was not evidence-based, but now we have like a ton of data on the health benefits of meditation.
Oh, it's abundant, but there's so many things that are better. It's kind of like the beginning of the exercise movement. Go for a long jog. That's actually bad for you. And it's provably bad for you. And there's all kinds of ways we can talk about that. Now, being cardiovascularly fit is good for you. But the assumption that running for 10 miles a day is going to make you fit that way, it's an easy assumption to make. It's a reasonable assumption. It's just wrong. So the idea is, well, if I want to achieve a certain state, I have to meditate. In fact, if I meditate more, I'll get better results. There is not great evidence for that. So if your goal is, I'm going to meditate for 2 hours a day, wouldn't a better goal be to say, I'm going to get the results of meditating for 2 hours a day in 20 minutes. And then the rest of the time, I'm going to play with my kids, or I'm going to go have a romantic evening with my girlfriend. I'm going to do something else, right? Meditation is like exercise, and efficiency matters because your time on earth matters. And if you spend all of your time on earth in a cave, which is what we used to do, you want to be enlightened? 20 years in a cave, you'll come out of there. I don't have 20 years to spend in a cave, right? So there's kind of a moral obligation. Do meditation that works.
So you're saying there's a more efficient path to reaping some of the benefits.
There are dozens of more efficient paths. And one of the ones is actually kale related. You want to know that one?
Yeah, please.
Okay. This is a new concept in biohacking from Heavily Meditated. And it's called BICEP, Brief Intentional Conscious Exposure to Pain. Now, you've probably heard of yogis laying on a bed of nails. In the very early days of the biohacking movement, I used to sell a bed of plastic nails that you could lay on to calm your nervous system. Well, monks in the 14th century, Gnostic monks, they would whip themselves. And every morning, just for a minute or two, I used to be horrified by this. Say, oh my gosh, they think they're such sinners, they have to do this. That's not why they're doing it. And then Texans, they eat really hot chili peppers. Or people working on addiction. How many addicts do you know without tattoos?
Very few.
It's because the pain of the tattoo is helping them to regulate their dopamine levels. It turns out that intentionally and consciously exposing yourself to pain, not self-harm, pain, it resets the sensitivity of your dopamine receptors for the entire day. That means it takes less motivation to go to work, to get stuff done, less motivation to meditate. And biohackers, we get in really cold water. It's all the same pathway, and it's entirely separate from the benefits you get metabolically with cold shock proteins and building more brown fat and all that. So it's the fact that it's uncomfortable that matters. And it only takes a minute, maybe 3. And that involves kale because eating kale is exposure to pain.
For some, yeah. Okay, so pain as a biohacking tool, I mean, that sounds intense, to say the least. What are some ways of safely inducing pain for mental and physical gain?
Wasabi works. You don't really put too much wasabi on your sushi, right? And just experience it, but don't fight it. Just experience it. And it actually calms your body. It goes, oh, look who's in charge. I guess it's not my automated systems. I guess it's my conscious thing. And again, do not do anything that hurts you. The most common one is turn on the cold water in your shower on your face. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. The fact that it's not pleasant makes a huge difference because the rest of the day, you are motivated by less dopamine. And dopamine's very interesting because you get rewarded for pursuing a goal with dopamine, and you don't get any reward from getting the goal. So if it takes less dopamine to make you want to pursue things, that's a really big benefit. And it means it takes less effort to go sit on the couch and meditate. It takes less effort to go to the gym. It takes less effort to just focus. So this is a really potent thing to do. And you can get little spiky mats that you lay on. Do that for a minute. It doesn't cause any harm whatsoever. You lay on it like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And then after a week or two, it's not that uncomfortable. You stand on it. You say, oh, that's uncomfortable. And it's not. And what's going on there is when there's something that's not harmful to the body, because it's dumb and very fast, which is useful for running away from tigers before you think, it will create a pain response and a fear response. But when you just sit there and you don't panic because of the fear response, you don't freak out, you do your best to be calm, the body goes, oh, I guess that wasn't scary. And it actually chills you out for the rest of the day. So it's not as bad as it sounds. 1 minute of cold water on your face in exchange for not hating your job, for having less sugar cravings, for having less alcohol cravings. It's a great exchange. And it's funny, this is ancient practice. And again, it's called BICEP, Brief Intentional Conscious Exposure to Pain. And I'm bringing that into the world of biohacking and heavily meditated because it's an entirely different benefit than we expect from cold plunging.
And is this how you start your morning, or what's your protocol?
It works better in the morning. However, if you were to get, say, one of the spiky mats, you can buy them for $30 somewhere, and you lay on that before bed for about 10 minutes, you will get profoundly good sleep because the body goes through this, oh, I'm going to die. You're not going to die. Just like if you skip lunch, you're not going to die, but you might, I'm going to starve. No, you're not. After that, if you ever held a puppy and like they wriggle around, and if you just hold them, then they just give up and they go, and they just, well, your nervous system is a puppy. It'll do the same thing. So right before bed, I don't like cold right before bed. Some people, it helps them, but for a lot, it doesn't work. But laying on a mat with spikes would work fine. So these are ancient practices. We're just discovering the neurobiology of how they work.
Is the mechanism similar to how maybe like a weighted blanket works? Like when you're holding the puppy analogy?
There may be some overlap. The weighted blanket is usually more about your vagal nerve. It causes a calmness. And the difference with a spiky mat or with a cold plunge or any of these things is that you get a spike of like, right? But the fact that it doesn't lead you to run away and to panic, the body soon realizes, I guess that spike wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And it's that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It has a weird paradoxical effect on dopamine receptors. So it's kind of cool. And I do sleep with a weighted blanket, but that's more because it stops you from rolling around as much and because it calms the vagal nerve. It's a pretty noticeable effect on deep sleep for me.
You think this is why we like scary movies?
I wonder. I didn't do any research on that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like hacking our, these primordial systems, our meat OS, as you refer to it.
Exactly. We probably should talk about how the meat OS makes decisions about reality and why meditation or these other practices from the book, how they can help you get in charge of it. So when there's a new signal in the world, I clap my hands and it doesn't make it into your brain until your body decides what to do. And here's the steps it's going to run through. And it's doing this constantly for everything. Number one, it's an F word, is fear. And if it's scary, run away from, kill, or hide, or maybe fawn over it. The fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Well, what do you mean if it's scary? It's not scary. It doesn't matter. Your brain was too slow. The body is a distributed consciousness of mitochondria and other things that are talking to each other via several different signaling mechanisms, and they're looking around in near real time going, is it scary? Is it scary? And this has worked for all life forms. And different life forms have different responses. Tree puts out sap, a skunk will spray you, humans will run away or punch you, whatever. And you do that, and you see these in those videos on YouTube where someone startles another person, they jump and have that response. They didn't think about jumping. They didn't choose to jump. Their nervous system did that to keep them alive. So that's fear. The next F word is food. And your body will tell you to eat everything because famine's a problem, right? So we have fear, we have food, and then the next one is probably one of your favorites. All life has to do it to stay alive for multiple generations. It's an F word, Max. Do you know this one?
I'm guessing it's the four-letter F word.
Oh, you went there. I was thinking fertility. But fertility. I understand you're in the 4-letter now. It is the F-bomb. And so before your brain even hears the sound, your body's like, is it scary? Can I eat it? And should I hump it? And then after that, and there's 2 more steps it goes through. After that, it's going to give you an emotion. And then your logical brain is going to tell you a story that makes the emotion real. This is the basis of reality and consciousness, and it is fucked up. Okay? Except, I just explained everything you've ever done that you're ashamed of, right? Every time you didn't ask the girl out, every time you didn't take an opportunity, procrastination is fear. Every time you shied away from something, every time you didn't do what you wanted to do, it was fear. Every time you ate all of the Ben & Jerry's and all the pizza, that was food. And every time you went on the date with that person or people that you shouldn't have, it was just your operating system doing what Mother Nature wants it to do. So there's no cause for shame. And very importantly, the fact that you don't want to go to the gym That's your body being very truthful. If you go to the gym, there might not be enough food to fill you back up afterwards, so the gym is going to look unattractive. So many people are like, I'm so ashamed. I know I want to go to the gym, but I don't want. No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just your body doing its thing. And the reason that I wrote Heavily Meditated is the other two F words in order that the body will do. So we have fear, food, fertility. The next one is friend. So we are wired in our bones. All life is wired to support its own species and to support other species and to support life around it. You do not have to have a conscious brain to do that. It is built into life. Okay, that's kind of hopeful. And then the final F word, which is the core of Heavily Meditated, it is forgiveness. And for all other life besides humans, it's probably just evolution. But for humans, I make it forgiveness because forgiveness closes the loop to go back and let you turn off inappropriate fear responses. And what happens then is you imagine like a set of cups, you have to fill each one. So now you only have so much energy. So you fill up the fear cup, except you made it smaller. So there was a lot more left for food. Oh, you learned how to do fasting so you don't feel like you're going to die without tacos? Oh, that got smaller. And then, maybe you shifted from porn and one night stands to sacred intimacy kind of stuff that's truly nourishing. What's left? Oh, energy for my community, for my purpose, for my family. And then what's left after that is enough energy to evolve and to become the person you want to be. It's that important. And you use biohacking to add more energy, because if you can make more energy, you can fill up all the cups more easily. And that's necessary if you want to live to at least 180 like me. And I have no interest in not dying. I have a great interest in living as long and as well as I choose.
So put another way, would you say the 5 Fs are essentially Dave Asprey's hierarchy of needs?
It's different than the hierarchy of needs. So Maslow, who wrote the hierarchy of needs, he's a brilliant guy and he died before his time. And what he's talking about is an incomplete hierarchy, because in his notes that were unpublished, it was just published or just talked about probably 3-4 years ago. Scott Barry Kaufman, a friend who's been on my show a couple times. Have you interviewed him?
Yeah.
Okay,
he's
cool.
Great. Love Scott.
Lovely guy. He studied all of Maslow's papers, and transcendence was the final word on the hierarchy of needs, where that's a basic human need. So there are mappings, but these are about needs. What the biohacking F words are is this is how the body processes reality, right? And what Maslow was looking for was a self-actualized person, right? What I'm arguing is that understanding the order of operations for these things and how the body allocates energy to them when you're not paying attention, it defines your reality. And it's why a meditation practice or a meditation with any of the meditation accelerators on it from the book, it turns fear down. And so you could look at something and say, that's terrifying. If you turn that off, it's so much easier than what I learned in the monasteries in Tibet or in Nepal. They'll tell you, notice the feelings. They're coming in. Oh, there's a sensation and emotion. Gently set it aside. Be curious. Do not. It works. It just takes an enormous amount of time. And the biohacking approach is, if I keep getting this emotion and it doesn't serve me, maybe I can go to the root cause and maybe I can turn off that alert. So one thing you could do, you could pick up your phone and you could say, I have a lot of alerts going off on my phone right now, right? So I'm just going to, ignore them. And you can, but it takes energy to ignore them, right? Or you could say, I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn off the TikTok alerts and the Instagram alerts. And if you still use Facebook, whatever, all those things. Which one makes your phone more usable? Having no alerts that interfere with your concentration, right? Well, your body is sending up alerts thousands of times a day that are not real. They're just annoying. And we learn to just live with that. And even worse, we think they're real. Prime example, someone cuts you off in traffic. Okay? That pushes most people's buttons. Why? Like, what does it feel like when someone cuts you off in traffic?
It feels like an assault. It feels like, like an infringement on your time, on your space. It feels like a disrespect.
Right.
And it's aggressive.
Are any of those feelings reality based?
No.
No. So the guy who cuts you off could be going to the hospital to deliver his baby. Right? In fact, I promise you that when someone cuts you off, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't mean you don't get an urge to run them off the road and jump out and, hit them with a claw hammer or something. I'm just reading your field. I'm kidding. But, people get really, really angry with this road rage. What that is your nervous system, this automated system, it hijacked your brain and it told you a story that what you were doing was justified. It's not. And even being angry isn't justified. So most functioning adults, we grit our teeth, like, dick, right? And then you keep driving and you think about it all day long and it sucks up all the energy that you could have used to think about tacos. Right? It's just wasted energy. So what I'm teaching in Heavily Meditated is the process that I've used on more than 1,000 of the world's top entrepreneurs and successful people at 40 Years of Zen. This is my neuroscience academy in Seattle. And we have brought people through, we spend 5 days, we put computers on their heads, we measure their brain waves for hours every day and teach them to go in and turn off alerts. So it's an expensive program and it works. It's profoundly life-changing. So I took the teachings from that, and all of that work on the process came out of tons of research and tons of working with gurus and meditation people. And I call it the reset process. And what the reset process is structured steps to turn off alerts in your operating system so that instead of someone cutting you off in traffic, if someone cuts you off, you don't care. Because the reality is you don't care. Right? But your body makes you want to care. And just the huge scope of the wasted energy we have for all of the stories we tell ourselves to justify our emotions that are based on an ancient system trying to keep tigers from eating us. That's why meditation is so important. And these very advanced meditators, when they go incredibly deep for years, they get to the point that they aren't listening to any of those signals. And they see a world that is profoundly different than what we see. And it's because the body they teach it to be calm enough and to not believe the stories. And when you don't believe the stories, what are you going to see? Reality. And the most important reason that I'm focused on this now, and probably for the next many years, it's that when people can be triggered, they're programmable. And I want to live in a world full of people who cannot be programmed, because then we do good things. I know we are wired in our bones to be kind to each other. It is built in, but it doesn't work if your energy is too low. I filled your water with fluoride that we finally admitted ruins your thyroid gland, and bad oils and all the other crap they do that literally lowers the amount of energy you have so that you have less energy to manage your fear and your emotions. And then they crank up your emotions with social media and a bunch of lies and all this other crap. Is it any wonder that you're easy to program? No. So your job is to have abundant energy and don't waste it on stupid fear responses, stupid hunger responses, and porn, things like that. Because you can transform fear into its opposite. What do you think the opposite of fear is?
Well, I'm inclined to say love, but just because I've heard that before as being, two sides of the coin.
Right. It's a common answer. And I would suggest that peace is the opposite of fear. Because you can be unafraid and not in love. Love is a lot easier when you're feeling peaceful, and your partner will feel safe with you when you're feeling peaceful. So peace nourishes us because there's no fear. There's nothing going away. And peace definitely makes love easier. And then what's the opposite of hunger?
Feeling satiated, satiety.
It's also a common answer. It's actually feeling nourished, right? Because you can feel full of Twinkies and you're basically satiated for a brief period of time. When you're nourished, your body knows at a very deep level that it has what it needs to thrive. And it's a different feeling, right? So when you're nourished, you can fast for 3 days and still feel satiated, right? And then we get to the next F word, which is, fertility or fucking. So what do you think the opposite of that is? Or what's the positive pole of that?
The opposite of fertility or fucking?
It may not be the opposite, but it's also a polarity. And on one side, we have lust and loneliness. And on the other side, we have a form of nourishment for adults. Having truly mind-blowing intimate relationships, and including intimate sex, is a form of nourishment for adults. In fact, we need it. We need it as much as we need air and water. And when people are lacking that, it affects your longevity, it affects your happiness, it affects your dopamine, it affects all sorts of things. And the problem is we say, okay, well, what do I do if I have a girlfriend? I've got OnlyFans or whatever. And it comes at a great cost because it moves you in the wrong direction. So it's a feeling of always being unsatisfied. And all of the states of controlling your nervous system, these are altered states. High performance is an altered state. Flow is an altered state. Creativity is an altered state. 20% of people report meeting God during orgasm at least once in their life. And you're never going to know unless they tell you, because they're just laying there twitching, but they're having a profound, healing, deep, nourishing experience.
Damn, I've never had an orgasm like that.
There are ways.
Let me guess, they're in the book.
It's in one of my other books, actually. The Taoists say for men to keep your orgasm to under an hour if you want to live a long time.
To keep your orgasm under an hour?
Yes.
Male orgasm lasts a couple of seconds.
That's male ejaculation. That's different.
Huh. What do you mean by that?
I can just say that having a half-hour orgasm is something I've done, and your abs hurt. Like it's like, I'm done, and your body's like, no, you're not. So this is something that I talk about briefly in this book. In Game Changers, I published a year worth of data trying to disprove the Taoist equations for ejaculation frequency in men. And so I mentioned it and heavily meditated.
Is this like getting into Tantra?
It is getting into Tantra. But what happens in men and not in women is that when you ejaculate, this is totally different from having sex. Just when you ejaculate, your testosterone levels drop precipitously for 24 to 48 hours, and your prolactin levels go up. So prolactin makes you feel tired and lazy. That's why you pass out. And your testosterone's low, which means your dopamine is low. So the whole will you respect me in the morning thing, it's based on hormones. So one of the things that you learn when you're, say, intermittent fasting or fasting, if I don't have lunch, I won't die. And when you enter into a path of Tantra or some of the other practices in the book like that, you end up in this space where ejaculating isn't the point of sex anymore. And that means you're going to have a lot more sex for a lot longer. And the equation for men for how frequently to ejaculate to keep your testosterone so you don't age more quickly, it's age in years minus 7 divided by 4.
Age in years minus 7 divided by 4. So I'm 42 minus 7 would be 35. Minus 7.
35 divided by 4, which is, what is that?
Well, less than
8.
10.
Yeah, it's like 9 times 4.
8, 16, like 8.
8 or 9. So that means you ejaculate once every 8 or 9 days or less frequently than that. And I was like, this is the biggest bunch of crap I've ever seen. So for a year, I tried that. I tracked my daily happiness. And they also say if you want to live forever, once every 30 days and keep the orgasms under an hour. I did it. And I started having those exceptionally long orgasms. But here's the thing. If the goal is not for me to get off quickly, what else are you going to do? Well, you're going to have a lot more fun, and probably she's going to enjoy it. But the Taoists never wrote an equation for women. And I looked long and far, and the reason is that they say a woman walks away undiminished. So there is an equation that I figured out after a lot of testing for women. It's the number of orgasms until you feel like you're going to die plus 2.
The number of orgasms
until the woman feels like she's about to die plus 2.
I wonder how many orgasms that is.
It's usually about 9.
9 Have you put this to the test, this theory?
Of course. So I kind of say that there's a lot of women laughing, and they're either laughing, going hell yeah, or they're like, Dave's cringe. And if you think I'm cringe, dude, I don't care. Like, I just don't care. Right? Talk to Montauk Chia, had him on the show. Like, this is ancient, precious knowledge. And here's the deal: if you're a guy and you learn how to control that, you're indestructible. And it's not like I'm the guy who invented this. It's a very ancient practice from Chinese medicine, from Taoism. Napoleon Hill wrote about this. So all of a sudden, now sex becomes very sacred and very intimate, and both partners go into altered states of healing. And it is one of the paths that is not meditation. And if you're saying, well, I have to meditate for 2 hours a day to be a good person, may I humbly submit that having 2 hours of incredibly passionate, intimate sex with someone you trust and feel safe with might do more to heal your nervous system and help you evolve? I didn't invent that. It's a practice.
Well, what does that 80-year study from Harvard on human adult flourishing says? What does that study say? I mean, we repeatedly hear that, interpersonal relationships are the primary variable that predicts having a good long-term health outcome.
It's your primary partner or maybe partners and your primary community. And isn't that weird? Less energy on fear, less energy on hunger, more energy on healing, powerful, nourishing sex. You have enough energy left for your community. You want to live a long time? Less fear, less hunger, and you shift all the energy into the things that matter. And that's why heavily meditated is so important. And the biohacking movement has always been about consciousness and longevity and human performance and cognitive performance. And I didn't put a lot of the meditation stuff in the early days of starting the movement because it was just a little bit too out there. But you can measure the result in your life. And ultimately, biohacking says results matter.
What style of meditation do you practice?
I don't practice any style of meditation. I have practiced many different styles. And what I do is I hook my computer up to my head using the technology from 40 years of Zen. And it can guide me into states that take a long time to do without it. And I teach you how to do it without computers in the book. So the closest commonly known kind of meditation to that would be loving kindness, right? And loving kindness is around focusing around the feeling in your heart, but I do it in a structured way where if you want to enter these advanced states, the first skill you develop is empathy. Okay, I can feel someone else's pain. And I know you pretty well, Maxie. We go back a long time. So you're capable of empathy. In fact, you probably feel other people's emotions when you don't want to, right? Empathy is not a good place to be. Because now you're at the whim of everyone else, right? You walk into a room, oh, that person's sad, and you pick it all up. So the step beyond empathy that is a higher order in the teachings of Buddhism is compassion, where you can walk into a room, you can choose empathy. But whether or not someone's in a state of distress or a state of happiness, you automatically, in your operating system, you wish them well. Even if they're a total douchebag, even if they want to kill you, you automatically wish them well. And then if they're a douchebag, all right, I'm just going to have my boundaries and go to the space. And if they want to kill you, you will stop them. But you won't do it in a triggered state. Like one of my favorite stories from Japan is about a samurai. And he gets killed. And one of his students says, I will swear revenge. And goes to the ends of Japan, hunts everyone down involved in this. And he's about to strike down the person who killed his teacher. And the guy spits in his face. And he stops. Right as he's about to have his sword go down, he sheathes his samurai sword. And the guy's about to kill him. He goes, why didn't you kill me? You defeated me in battle. And he said, because you spit in my face, you made me mad. I don't want to kill you in anger. I'll kill you later, after I calm down. Right? I'd rather be that guy. Right? I'd rather not really have to kill him with a sword, but hey, if that's what's necessary, that's what's necessary, but it's not going to cost me. Right? And having that ability to just be fully present, that is a compassion skill that is higher than empathy. And then the next step when you do advanced practice is Well, in the East, they would call it enlightenment. In the West, we call it resilience or equanimity. And that is my goal, is equanimity, which means I get to choose my state and no force on earth can take me out of it. And I've been working on that for a very long time, in part because my physical state was just not good with the weight and chronic fatigue syndrome and toxic mold, all the stuff, Asperger's syndrome, all the stuff I dealt with. But then from there, okay, what about my emotional state? I would like to have some control over that, so I'm not constantly just being flung all over the place. And then what's my spiritual state? It's a long answer to your question about what kind of meditation. There are many different tools in here in the book where, okay, well, what would be the appropriate tool to use? So one of the most powerful things is a body scan. Some people call it yoga nidra. And this is where, something I've taught my kids since they were little. You lay down, you can do it when you're standing or sitting once you're used to it. And you put all of your attention on your toes. Maybe you visualize like a blue light on your toes. And then the ball of your foot. And then the arch, and then the ankle. And you just slowly really put all of your attention into that part of the body. And you slowly move up the legs. And you'll find you're noticing things you never paid attention to in your body. And it's deeply and profoundly relaxing for sleep. That's a form of meditation. And for so many of us, meditation is, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to sit there. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to gently set things aside. So maybe instead of doing that, you want to do a body scan, which is more active. And then there's another thing about meditation that I think we need to talk about. In human society for the last couple of thousand years, 98% of people were involved in agricultural production. It's not that way right now, but it has been. That means the vast majority of us have farmer brains. Well, the other 2%, okay, when there's an explosion, they run towards the explosion, right? These are our warriors, our leaders, and their helpers, but they do not have the same response as other people. If you're one of those people, there's a good chance you're an entrepreneur. There's a good chance that you might be a firefighter or in the police or in the service. And if you're wired that way and you try to do a meditation that works great for farmers, what do you think is going to happen?
It's not going to work.
It's like Valium. It's horrifying. So there are some meditation devices I will not touch because they work really well for people who have a brain that it's like, okay, I can plant rice all day long. Like, and that's okay. And to me, like I couldn't do that. Right. And it's not because I lack peace. It's because it's not in my wiring. So there's a meditation I mentioned called Zazen, which is a Japanese samurai meditation. And you kneel down, you sit on your knees, and you sit with your spine straight and tip your head down a little bit. And you look at like a speck on the carpet about 2 feet in front of you and just breathe in and out. And you look at it for 2 to 5 minutes, and that's your meditation. And that might do more for your brain. So when we say meditate, that's like saying exercise. Oh, I'll get some pink dumbbells and I'll flap them around. I'm exercising. Or I'll go for a 10-mile run in bad shoes. You want to be able to choose the thing that's going to get you results. So the primary thing, at a minimum, you should do on top of just mindfulness is breath work. And I mentioned 4 or 5 types of breath work in Heavily Meditated that you might consider. My path in all of the spiritual stuff started when I was 30, maybe 31. I went through a really traumatic divorce. I was married very briefly in my 20s. And I was kind of broken. I'm like, I have tried being rich. I made $6 million when I was 26, and I lost it when I was 28. I've tried being married. I've tried being famous. I was in Entrepreneur Magazine when I was 23 for selling the first thing ever sold over the internet. And none of those made me happy. I was miserable. I was anxious. I didn't even know what anxiety was because I was always anxious. And I went to a retreat where they did holotropic breathwork. And holotropic breathwork was invented by Stan Grof and his wife. And Stan is now 100 years old. When he was 94, I led a workshop where we trained 200 people in his techniques. He's a psychiatrist from Czechoslovakia. And I say that because it was Czechoslovakia back then, not the Czech Republic. And Stan gave 3,000 patients pharmaceutical-grade LSD with a license. And he invented transpersonal psychology, Like so many of the healing things, IFS, the stuff Gabby Bernstein's a dear friend who's into, all of these different healing things, EMDR, they came about from what he discovered from giving people acid.
Interesting.
And when LSD became illegal, then he said, we got to find something. So they adopted a technique from yogic breathing that makes you trip balls. And I did this without really knowing what I was getting into, and I had profound experiences. Would I recommend holotropic breathwork as a daily practice? You'll go bonkers. You shouldn't do that. So even saying to do breathwork, what kind of breathwork for what state? And that's why heavily meditate is important. Okay, what should you do? At a minimum, there's calming breathwork. There's kind of 3 buckets in the book. There's calming breathwork. There's a breathwork for mild altered states. And then there's advanced work. And you've probably had Wim Hof on the show.
Yeah.
So Wim and I have been friends for years. I remember at one of the first biohacking conferences, Rick Rubin brought him to the conference, and it wasn't scheduled to be on stage. So this is great. Come on up, man. And he says, all right, let's do some breath work. And I'm very experienced at breath work, but I'm on stage in front of a couple thousand people, and I'm starting to like see some stars. This is pretty. And then, hold your breath empty and do push-ups. And I'm thinking, I'm probably going to launch to outer space or pass out, one of the two.
It's also very uncomfortable, isn't it?
It can be. You get used to it after a while. And that kind of breath work, profound. You can change your physiological state, and it's based on something called Tumo breath work, which is from the Himalayas, and they would use that to stay warm.
I love how you bridge the gap between all of these Eastern modalities and modern science.
There is so much science behind breath work. Another thing, you ever notice, do you tape your mouth at night when you go to sleep?
Sometimes.
I love it. I've been taping my mouth for years now. It's such a big thing. When you first start doing it, you notice, I can't breathe through my nose. And then you realize, oh, you can. But if you're paying attention, one side of the nose is always more open than the other. There's a 19-minute cycle between left and right nostril dominance. So one of the techniques that many people have tried in a yoga class is alternate nostril breathing, where you breathe in through one nostril and you plug it, and then you plug the other one and breathe out, and you do circular breathing like that. And that will shift the dominance of your hemispheres relatively quickly. So, okay, what's the right kind of breath work? Should I be doing this fast, deep stuff that makes you trip balls? Should I be doing the Wim Hof breath work? Should I be doing alternate nostril? Well, I put them in kind of buckets depending on your goal. And some of the more esoteric ones, like holotropic breath work, it is on par with psychedelics, and it works even better in a group, and it works better with a facilitator, and you're going to need to talk about it as if you've done psychedelics. So the other one I'll call out is called Art of Living. 50 million people do Art of Living breathing every single morning.
I've never heard of that. Art of Living breathing?
Art of Living. And this is something that was popularized by Sri Ravi Shankar, who's a guru in India. I came across his work when I was in Silicon Valley, around when I was 30. And an engineer who probably saw something in me, it was from India, said, Dave, you should come to see this thing. And I go to this training class, and there's like white robes and candles and fruit. And I'm just like, I'm a computer hacker. I have mirrored sunglasses. This is not my scene. And then a few months later, someone called and said, they're doing a training class for executives at one of the founders of Intel's house. Okay. And they put it in language I could understand around human performance. So after I learned that, every morning for 5 years, I would put my hands at my waist, and I would do, and in your mind you say so hum, like, which is the way he does. And then you put your hands here to move the air to different parts of the lungs, but it's slow, then medium, and then fast, and then you put your arms up like this, and you do it here to move the air. Now, why the hell would I spend 15 minutes every morning doing that? Because it worked. And every Saturday, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, like at 6:30, and I would drive a half hour to a CEO's house, a friend who I'd worked with, and he would host about 20 entrepreneurs in the Bay Area. And we would spend 45 minutes doing breath work together. And one of my friends, Prabhakar is his name, said, I can't tell you why I do this, but I feel like I took a mental shower for the whole week. So there are many different of these things. And what I want the world to understand is that there is no right way to meditate. There is a type of meditation for your brain to get the results you want. And the kind of meditation that is new, that is in heavily meditated, is the reset process. And that's a structured meditation where you can let go of something that really gets to you. So you can stop being triggered and stop being programmed. And the reset process is really interesting because in it, it's an active meditation. And there's about 8 steps to it. And I don't know that we want to try and teach all of them on the show because it will probably go a little bit deep and I don't want people driving to do it. But part of it is visualizing the person or thing that is a trigger, and then actually tapping in to how bad it made you feel. And one of the skills you have as a human that isn't well documented in the manual that doesn't exist is you can replay any emotion that you've ever experienced, just like a Spotify playlist. So if you think about that puppy and like, how did your heart feel? Like, what did it smell like? And like, you'll feel your body shift. And you can also think about the guy who cut you off in traffic and you feel your diaphragm tighten and your jaw clenches and all that kind of stuff. Well, we have that ability all the time. We just only replay bad things unless we consciously learn to replay good things. So when you're doing the reset process from 40 years of Zen, which is where this originated, and like I said, 10 years of testing quantitative on brainwaves. Like this is science. You replay the sensation in your body of something bad that happened. And I'm not talking about re-traumatizing and things like that, but it shouldn't be comfortable, right? And if you're trying to do something really heavy, do this kind of thing with a therapist. But what you do is you re-experience it. And then this is the thing that's missing from almost all literature on forgiveness. Before you can let go of that, and that reset process ultimately is forgiveness, you have to feel gratitude. That means the guy cut you off in traffic, find one good thing that happened. It doesn't have to be big at all. It's just that your operating system, if it's stuck in blah feelings, without the spark of gratitude, it will not shift out of that, right? So the body also wants to gain, right? So, it turns out the guy cut me off, but I didn't get in an accident. Okay, there's my win, right? It can be the tiniest thing. And I've had people who've been tortured in war come in and do the reset process. And when they're done, when they come in, they're like, I was tortured and it was really bad, but I survived and I'm still working on it. And when they're done with the reset process, they say, I was tortured and I'm done. And there is no emotion on it whatsoever. So what they're doing is turning on the emotional uncomfortableness, finding gratitude, and gratitude is the spark that lights the fire of forgiveness. And what the hell is forgiveness? Forgiveness is not telling someone that you forgive them. It has nothing to do with saying that anything anyone else did was okay. It's not condoning anything. It's not telling anyone anything. Forgiveness is a physiological state of the heart and mind and body. And you're learning how to turn on that state. And when you do it, you can go through your life and you're going to find, I'm feeling really, really disrespected because a guy cut me off in traffic. But I'm going to ask you, when's the first time you felt disrespected like that? And this random thing will pop in your head, probably from early childhood. You know, the coach was mean to you, or someone didn't believe you. Our bodies are so dumb. They get programmed before our brain is in there as an adult to do anything. So, why don't we run the reset process on that old thing? And that time, Ms. Johnson yelled at you or whatever it was. And people do it. And all of a sudden, I had no idea. I hadn't thought about how I felt back then. Like, I'm really pissed off. Right? Okay, good. You get into it. And what was one good thing? Well, she still taught me, to read or whatever. And then you go into the forgiveness step. And that is, you sit the other person across from you in this meditation. And the meditation's easier with electrodes guiding you in and out, but it doesn't have to be done that way. And I invite anyone who feels called, come to Seattle and do it with my team. But I want everyone to be able to do this at home. And when you take the next step, you envision the other person sitting across from you. And then you look at them and you say, what happened to them to make them act that way? If it wasn't about me, and you start thinking, what did their parents do to them? Like something's deeply wrong. This is a flawed and probably wounded human being, and their acting out had nothing to do with me. And you start seeing them as a person, not a demon, not a evildoer, not a bad person, just a flawed human acting out of their own programming. They're not even free. They're programmed to do that. And they got programmed by usually their parents in society. Okay. And how their parents get that from their parents, from their parents, from their parents, from their parents. And it goes back forever until someone breaks the cycle. And so the idea here is read the book, learn how to meditate, do whatever it takes, and break the cycle so you don't pass it on, because it's not useful for humans anymore. And we don't need that. In fact, it creates massive disruption in society and creates a lot of suffering in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So now all of a sudden, this person sitting across from me, oh my gosh, they're a flawed human. Something bad happened. Something good happened, even if it wasn't very good. And when you step into that, you start feeling your heart shift. And this is where the loving kindness kind of sensation comes in. And there's a layer around the heart that'll open up. And then you're like sending forgiveness lasers. It feels different for different people, but there's an energy that comes out of you and you let it flow into them. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh. And if it still doesn't work, see them when they're 3 years old, right? And you do this, and people always, 100% of the time, they come up, they're like, I had the best family ever when they come into 40 years of Zen. You might have, you might not have, you won't ever know. Because when you're 3 years old, you must believe that your family was perfect. Otherwise, you're not safe. So I've had people come in whose parents were straight up abusive. Like, no, I had a good family. My parents hit me sometimes. Like, no, there might have been some good stuff in the family, but there was big problems that you haven't acknowledged because your reality wasn't based that way. So then, but people forgive their parents, and I've forgiven mine, because here's the reality: every parent on earth has screwed up. Because there was that one time where you were a little bit tired, and your kid was saying no, 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 and you're like, stop it. Okay, and if that was the wrong tone of voice for the way the kid was, then it left a little mark. And there's no way you could know, right? And maybe you did something that wasn't even in anger that just left a mark, right? So as adults, it's our job to go through and say, oh my God, look at all these alerts going off in my nervous system. I wonder where those are from. Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. It's different than an old school meditation path, which is notice the alerts. Gently learn to ignore the alerts. They'll slowly. No, turn the damn things off. And when you do that, you can look someone in the face who has wronged you, even in a big way, and there is no change in your heart rate. There is no anger. There is nothing, right? Maybe compassion, but there is nothing negative. It doesn't have anything positive. It doesn't mean you ever talk to the person again. So what I've found, and this is also part of Heavily Meditated, the two hardest traumas for adults to recover from are injustice and betrayal. Because it leaves a spiritual injury when someone you trust intentionally causes you harm. It is really, really painful. And it doesn't leave a scar that you can see, but it leaves a scar. And if you let that sit there, you will walk around with less trust for the rest of your life. And that's a very expensive thing to do. It will shorten your life, and it'll shorten your happiness. And it'll make you treat other people poorly that you don't want to treat poorly because you've been programmed. So you have to go in. The more you've been betrayed or the more injustice you've experienced, the more you've got to work through letting it go. Because once you're in charge of yourself and you can't be programmed, you can do something about injustice. But if you're reactive to injustice, you are just a pawn. There's nothing you can do. You are not free. And injustice is, I did the right thing and I got punished for it. And this is a very deep primal response. One of the best videos you could ever see on YouTube is the monkey with grape and cucumber experiment. Have you seen it?
No, never saw it.
You can look it up on a search engine. I used to say Google it, but Google is so censored these days. I don't know. I like any other search engine but Google. So they have two monkeys in a cage next to each other. They're divided by a barrier. And the monkeys are trained to do a task and get a reward. So the first monkey hands the rock through the little window, which is the task, and gets a piece of cucumber. And he's happy, eats the cucumber. And then the monkey next to him does the same task and gets a grape, which is much better than a cucumber. And the first one looks like, that wasn't very fair. So you go back to the first one. And the first monkey gets the rock, puts the rock out, and gives him another piece of cucumber. And the monkey looks up and throws the cucumber at the person. The monkey was grateful for the cucumber in step one, but once he saw the grape, he was not anymore. That's injustice in a primate brain, right? And so if this is a trigger for you, the monkey didn't choose to throw the cucumber. And I mean, it's kind of fun. The monkey goes just ballistic when it happens 3 times. And you are that monkey going ballistic unless you get the lesson. And this is not a fun lesson, but it's one that's terribly important. Life isn't always fair. We all get taught sometime that life is, it is not. Sometimes injustice happens, and sometimes bad people will do things that harm you on purpose. And if you allow that to control the rest of your life, you're not free. And for me, I had a lot of work to do on just resolving these trauma responses. One of the things that was a major component in my body flipping into an anxiety mode, I was born with my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I didn't lose oxygen, so that didn't really matter. And I tell the story in Heavily Meditated. I came into the world without a conscious adult brain, because that's how you're born, thinking something was trying to kill me. Right? That sets your nervous system up in a certain way. So what I find when people come through 40 years of Zen, they'll do the reset process on all the normal things. And like, you know what? I used to have some issues at Christmas with my parents. I used to have anger about my ex-husband or wife or something. And they go through and like, you know what? I reset everything, but there's still something left. And then it's one of 3 things. And this gets a bit more esoteric, but again, this is many different lineages will teach us, whether you're doing shamanic work or you're doing ancient practices from the East. After you've cleared out basically your childhood in this life, then you look, for some people, the path is what happened at birth and in the womb. And sometimes if your mom didn't feel safe, you pick it up in the womb. And this is born by science. This is not made up. The person who taught me this was the founder of the American Pre- and Perinatal Psychology Association. She taught me this when she was in her 80s and I was 30. And it absolutely changed my life. She's like, the reason you're tweaking all the time is because of the way you were born. I'm like, this is so dumb. But she had my number. Like, she knew what was going on in there. And I did the stuff and I became less reactive. This is not about your conscious brain. It's not about morality. It's just about ancient patterns that keep meat alive. And you're made out of meat before your brain can think. So some people, when they do 40 years of Zen, okay, I've cleaned out the things in my life that are holding me back. And the number one thing they say is there's less friction in everything I do. And that's why I want people to do the reset process at home. Some of them will go into their birth experience, especially if it was traumatic, or the experience of being in the womb if it was an unsafe house. Some people will say, I don't even know what's going on here, but I feel like I need to do forgiveness work for my mother or for my father. And they actually heal their lineage, which is a very shamanic perspective on things. And over, people have done that kind of work. And then an estranged family member that they haven't talked to in years will call them that night. Just like they pick it up in the field. And that's probably some kind of quantum coherence thing, but I'm not going to say I know the mechanism. I have some theories that seem good, but I do not know. But I know it happens repeatedly, and that there's actually hard science. Dean Redden from the Institute for Noetic Science wrote a whole book about it. So what's going on here is you heal your lineage, and then for some people, they're saying, I have no idea why, but I'm very angry at 14th century French people or whatever. And that's past life work.
Well, you hear the concept of generational trauma come up sometimes.
It's so real. One of the more powerful generational trauma conversations I've ever had was with Stephen Porges, who is the very, very famous psychiatrist who discovered how the vagal nerve in the body works. And there's something called polyvagal theory, which says it's the longest nerve. They call it the wandering nerve that controls digestion, rest, reset throughout the body. That different parts of it do different things. And he developed some sound technology, and people listen to it, and they can go in and start letting go of trauma. And in the US, he'd play it to a room full of 500 people, and you have 25 therapists because a few people really melt down. And when I interviewed him, he's telling me about how he went to London, and they started playing it, And after about 20 seconds, the entire room was melting. And like they had to stop playing it because they didn't have enough therapists. And he says the reason is that everyone who is a native Londoner, their parents lived through the bombings in World War II, and it's still there. And everyone else in London was chased out of their country. They're immigrants who had to leave their country because it was bad there, right? So the vast majority of people either have the trauma of leaving your society and your country and your home, or the trauma of someone trying to kill you in your home. And that is like, okay, we can address all of these traumas. There's technology. There's so much ability to do this. And at this point, there is no excuse for people walking around being anxious and triggered. There's a biological reason, and we have so much with AI and so much knowledge about the different genetic pathways, the breakdown of B vitamins and all of that. You can solve that biologically if it is biological. And if you do that and you feel better, but you still are triggered by anything, celebrate the trigger. Literally write it down. Oh my God, I noticed I got pissed off about this day. I'm going to run the reset process. I'm just going to never have that alert come up again. It's like every time an alert comes up on your phone, turn off the app with the alert. Turn off the app with the alert. Well, at a certain point, you don't see any alerts, and then maybe one pops up like, oh wow, I have another one I can turn off. But it becomes so much freeing. And here's the crazy results. When people go through 40 years of Zen, we've surveyed a lot of people who've been through. Again, this is 5 days of doing the reset process for many hours a day. It's very intense. So 2 weeks after that kind of intense, deep reset work, about 50% of people, slightly less than 50% of people, say their relationships are meaningfully improved. But if you wait 6 months after that, when your brain has time to remyelinate nerves and for new neural pathways that came about from forgiveness, once they're locked in, what happens is 91.7% of people report improved relationships. Almost everyone.
Wow.
And there's about a dozen other metrics that all just increase dramatically, metrics of quality of life. So you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars at a therapist. In fact, talk therapy oftentimes isn't very useful at healing things. It might make you feel better, but you go every week for decades. So meditation is one of the ways to enter an altered state for healing, right? And there are other ways to enter other altered states, like flow states or like a state of motivation, which is surprising because meditation isn't likely to make you feel more motivated. But laying on a spiky mat, getting in an ice bath, or getting a spanking for that matter, there's a whole, one of the chapters about somatic therapy, and there's BDSM as a conscious healing practice, where I interview Kimmy Inch, who's a somatic therapist, who said, well, I noticed some of my clients needed this, so now it's part of what I do. And
she dominatrix?
Yeah.
Wow.
And she teaches people how to do it with consciousness and healing. It's an altered states practice. It's not about, beating someone up or something. So it's a very different take on it. But in the chapter on brief intentional conscious exposure to pain, there are many people listening to the show who have used BDSM for profound healing. Because think about the reset process. You re-experience something that was unpleasant, and then you find something you're grateful for, and then you go into an exalted healing state of compassion.
Allows you to reprocess those traumas.
So many of the practices in BDSM, they're just replicating birth trauma. It's like if you come out of the womb, you're all squished and you have an unpleasant birth. It's like in your body. So then someone ties you up and someone gets your nervous system's attention with a brief intentional conscious exposure to pain. They're not harming you, right? And then, oh my gosh, maybe you have an orgasm. Like the body's like, okay, that sensation that was uncomfortable, it couldn't have been that uncomfortable because I just came. And it actually works as a cathartic healing. And so people can become much less reactive. And I'm not suggesting you go out there and get a spanking, but the name of the chapter is Go Spank Yourself.
I know, I saw that. Wow. You've been doing this for such a long time across all of these different modalities that you've experimented with. What would you say is the most profound lesson you've learned?
I've learned that my powers of self-deception are legion. All of us are. Literally everything we see is a hallucination made by our body so we can process reality. And every time I believe a negative emotion about something, it is not true. So let's say there's a situation, and I've been pretty public. I got fired from my own company. I kind of grew. I used to be at Bulletproof. Now Danger Coffee is my new thing, because who knows what you might do. But, getting fired from a company you spent 9 years building, that is a huge betrayal, a huge injustice, especially with what happened, where it was not a financial win the way it very much should have been. That can be soul crushing and things like that. So what did I do? I stuck electrodes on my head and I did the reset process. And it was still really hard. And I worked with my therapist on it too, right? And to be able to experience that and to not be wrecked by it. I'm not saying I wasn't stressed by it, and it was a long drawn out situation, but I don't think I would have been able to do that had I not had access to this kind of technology and this kind of knowledge. Because your ability to regulate your nervous system, you get a phone call that says, oh, we're going to take all of your shares away from you. And you're like, I have worked for a decade and this is wrong, right? You can be completely ungrounded by that, and then you become reactive, and that's what the other side wants. This is what sociopaths and narcissists do to control you. If you're unprogrammable because they can do it, and you're like, that seems like a really bad idea. I have attorneys. I'm going to go have dinner with my wife, and my attorneys are going to fuck you up. We'll talk later. Which one of those gives you a better quality of life, right? It's just, how do you learn to not lose it in times that feel like doom and gloom? Because the doom and gloom is always not real. I'm not saying that there aren't threats. I'm just saying that your emotions around the threats stop you from behaving the way you want to choose, the way you want to behave around the threats. And since so many people feel threats all the time, you get in an elevator and you don't know why, but that guy in the elevator maybe has something about him that looks like a bully from 5th grade, and your nervous system will tell you, I'm not safe. You are safe. But the feeling is real, and if you allow yourself to believe it, then you're going to act in a way that doesn't serve you. And at a minimum, you're terrified and you get off the elevator. So there's just no win from that. So I've learned every time my nervous system throws that shit at me is to smile a little bit and be like, thanks for trying to protect me. Let's turn off that trigger. Let's just go back and run the reset process. I'm not saying I'm done. I'm not saying I'm perfect by a long shot. I'm just saying I'm immensely happier, and I'm immensely more free, and I'm much harder to manipulate because I did all this work.
Powerful stuff. Well, people should definitely check out Heavily Meditated. I appreciate the wisdom. You always come in here with new things that you're toying with, and yeah, I feel like this is one of the more vulnerable conversations that we've had. So for that, I'm grateful.
Oh, well, you're welcome, Max. And I want people to understand how much control you have over your state. We just don't teach it. And it just makes me kind of sad when I just see a simple media campaign just absolutely push people's buttons. Because when you're in fear, you cannot think. And they're doing it on purpose. And the antidote to that is turn off the alerts. And it's a very different state, and it's one I wish for everyone.
Wise words. Yeah, there's definitely some wisdom in that. I mean, today so many people are living, at the edges of their nervous system's capacity to regulate fear and anxiety. And I think in many ways it's not due to anything implicit in who they are. It's about the environment. It's about the notifications, whether it's from the legacy media or social media, or I mean, there are any number of things. So being able to tune out the noise and to regain control over your thoughts, that's a really powerful skill that I think,
it's a core part of longevity. You're not going to live way beyond what you're supposed to if you are triggered all the time. You can't do it. So this is a core part of longevity. And even if you don't believe you can live longer, you will live better if you learn how to not be triggered, even if you still eat French fries all the time. It's just necessary. But if you maybe pair a better diet and a better body with a better approach to mindfulness, your capacity is so big. It's just amazing.
Yeah, you become a much more compassionate person, right?
I've become more compassionate. I've also become more discerning, because the harder you are to trigger, the harder you are to manipulate, the better judge of a situation you are. Right? So now when I deal with the inevitable entrepreneur situations that come up, I don't lose sleep over them. Like they do not affect me that way. And I've also, Max, I consciously uncoupled about 3 years ago and have a healthy co-parenting relationship with my former wife. Neither one of us got triggered enough to, go down the angry divorce kind of route. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, because if I did not know how to do this, I'm pretty sure I would have been a dick, right? So this is just a skill to be the person you want to be. And I'm all about the cold plunges. I'm all about eating the right stuff and, putting butter in your danger coffee and all the biohacks, because they give you more energy, which helps you manage fear and hunger and desire, all those things. But man, turning off the alerts, that's the missing part of biohacking.
Yeah. Amen. Can you cold brew danger coffee?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Fine.
Cause I've got some at home, and, that's something I was wondering about. Do the minerals actually transfer to a cold?
The minerals transfer just fine. They're heat stable, but they will transfer.
Beautiful.
Using a metal filter in all coffee is preferable anyway, because the coffee oils, even though they can raise cholesterol, they don't raise harmful cholesterol. In studies, oils from coffee reduce brain inflammation, and they can actually improve your liver.
Well, I love coffee.
Yeah.
You know that. Well, Dave, thanks again for coming out. Where can people find you on social media? How can they find your podcast? And where can they pick up your book, Heavily Meditated?
Sure. Pick up Heavily Meditated. You guys know how to buy books. Wherever books are sold, usually from a company that starts with A, but buy them from an indie bookstore if you can, because that's great. And the podcast is The Human Upgrade. It's 1,250 episodes, 500 and something million downloads, and 2 episodes a week for a decade.
And you look great on the cover. Is this the most jacked you've ever been?
Dude, it's insane. The picture on the cover, I did not dehydrate at all. I got off an airplane in Florida, and I did 10 push-ups for the photo. And
you've got veins in your abs.
Yeah.
Wild.
I kind of think this biohacking thing works. And max 20 minutes of exercise a week for that photo. That's all I do. It's all Upgrade Lab stuff, but it works.
I'm very impressed. Well, thanks for coming out, brother.
You got it. And thanks for having me, and come back on my show whenever you want.
Would love that. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.